you want a quick stop? We'll have a stop and start soon.
I was like,
This isn't going to go well, Chris.
I haven't got anything to say.
I just want to comment on the fact that this is the first time I've ever seen you fitting clothes.
You ever seen Finn
Without the suit, it's first
without a
time.
suit? Congratulations.
It's Jackie like a lad.
Yeah, so you can do that. Okay, so hello. Welcome to this evening's debate. And I suppose first of all we're going to read the minutes from last week, which is on the motion this House believes the Kardashians have ruined society. So welcome all to say minutes.
Hello everyone, hope you're all well. These minutes were written by our lovely outreach officer, Miss Lily Better, so if they're a lot better and a lot funnier than they usually are, then you know, blame. The 11th Ordinary Meeting of the 167th Session of the Literary and Scientific Society took place in the Senate Room on the 25th of February and was attended by 24 members. Prior members' business was heard from outreach officer, Miss Lily Better, who asked what people thought about hashtag Free Kesha. After much explanation, the decision was made that people simply didn't know enough about the topic. I'm reading the blind, just so you know. Following this, Mr. Chris Spratt asked the society if they'd like to drink. The answer was, of course, a resounding yes. He then announced his plan to set up a beer and brew society, which was welcomed happily. Treasurer Mr. Craig Miller then moved to a vote to be cast with regards to the Brexit debate. It was greatly welcomed across the board and the motion was passed. This vote, however, led to great discussion on the actual terminology used with regards to Brexit, with Mr. Chris Spratt again moving for it to be renamed GBRNI Exit, and Mr. Finbar Rogers suggesting IRExit if Ireland chose to leave. Yet another vote was cast for the motion. Somehow, this House would dye David Cameron's hair pig pink, with 14 ayes, 2 nays and 2 abstentions. Suffice to say, a lot happened during private member business. President's questions were then heard from Mr. Jane McNally, who asked what President Sinnott had for breakfast, to which she replied, cheese on toast. You're a freak, replied Mr. McNally. I don't remember that, it's awfully rude. President Sinnott then announced the evening's motion. This House believes the Kardashians have ruined society as we know it. Opening for the proposition was Miss Lee Suk with her maiden speech. She reacquainted the House with the things the Kardashians have done during 11 seasons of their hit TV show Keeping Up with the Kardashians, but questioned how they had come to be famous due to their lack of talent. She stated that their TV shows encouraged narcissism and was crushing the population of America. She went to such extremes as saying that the brain-dead TV should be controlled by the government as it encourages gossip for young children. She next reminded the House of Kim Kardashian's famous intellectual song Jam, Turn It Up, which in turn she stated lowers your IQ but gives you a false sense of security through making you feel smarter. She concluded by saying how fragile women's body image has become due to the sexualization of perfection plastered about women and some of the Kardashians, and how recognising the Kardashians as important in fact gives them too much importance. That made no sense, but thanks for that length. Opening for opposition was Secretary Mr. Robbie Whitehurst, who opened by rebutting the idea that Kardashian sexualization has done harm and asserts that it's feminism through body confidence. He went on to say how society as a whole can simply not be affected by just one family, as this degraded our autonomy. He then quoted the Kardashians in a long-winded, unnecessary way, leading on to the point that people are simply not as vacuous as the proposition would assume, as many people simply have it on in the background. He asserted that the problem of materialism was a cause for greater concern, as people have free will and there is simply no oppression by the Kardashians, as the proposition would have us to believe. He concluded by singing the lyrics of Kim Kardashian's hit song, Jam, Turn Me Up, much against the wishes of the audience. Speaking secondly to the proposition was Mr. Michael Beales, who during his speech inspired many selfies to be taken and stated that we have lost sight of what is real. That's literally it. That's all we got on Michael Beales. Speaking secondly for the opposition was internal convener Mr. Owen Mulholland, whose speech was simply too interesting not to mention. He started by bringing the House back to the reality and reminding them that this family was famous for sex and murder. He then went on to explain all the good things the Kardashians have done for society, such as dealing with fertility issues, relationship issues, and staying at church, and stating that Kris Jenner has herself founded a church. At which point we discovered Mr. Mulholland's blatant struggle with mathematics, after saying that church contained 5 letters instead of 6. His conclusion went on to contain several puns which were not well received. Closing the proposition in her maiden speech was Miss Sinead Burns, who opened by informing the House that Kim Kardashian's latex dresses merely made her look like a giant condom. She then asserted that Kim Kardashian's sexualization to such an extreme that she was sexualized to such an extreme that it was damaging. She closed by stating that we have an egocentric view of socialization now, and we have become used to extremes, so we've lost sight of deeper issues. Closing the opposition was Mr. Craig Miller, who opened by saying that his usual trusted source, Wikipedia, was broken, and that in fact Kim did have talent as he had seen the video. Just let that one sink in for a moment. He asserted that Kardashians were much like Shakespeare play, and that people like them had been around for hundreds of years. He believed that society was ruined in 1919 due to the free market economy, and how it is people's lack of awareness of others that caused such discontent in society. That profit without sympathy is so wrong. He closed by saying that sympathy from others would have ended the rot of society. The debate then moved to the floor where questions were heard from Mr. Jeremy Muller, Mr. James McNally, Finbar Rogers, Matthew Wilkinson, Chris Spratt, Gemma Cannon and Lily Venner. An opinion vote was taken based on personal views of the House, which read 2 ayes, 11 nays and 11 abstentions, and finally a casting vote was taken based on Speaker's performance, which read 6 ayes, 7 nays and 6 abstentions. May I take the minutes as read?
Okay, and so now after some announcements, pretty short this week, but last week, some of you might be there, we had our schools competition. Which was amazing. There were 10 schools, I think 24 teams competed in it. So Lily's not here this evening, but can we give her a round of applause to congratulate her? Someone who is here just because he knew his name was going to be read out in the announcements is Mr. Ben Murphy, who successfully hosted, convened, whenever he did convene, the Literafic InterVarsity, so the first Queen's Literafic InterVarsity in, I think it's in 1962, something like that. So yeah, about 60 years, and it went fantastically with 120 people-ish from UK, Ireland, Netherlands, that was about it. But yeah, Cork, yes, annexed of Cork. So yeah, no, it was absolutely fantastic. We ran up a massive bar tab, and it was great. There was a Subway and pizza, debating. And I believe University of Cork. Yeah, they won. University of Cork, they won. So congratulations to Maeve and Cian, who aren't here because they're in Cork. But a big well done to Ben for convening. And our final announcement is for our AGM. So our AGM, which elects the committee for next year, will be held on the 15th of March. So if you or anybody that you know who's not here this evening would like to be part of our committee for 2016-17, please send me a message, send a message, and state your nomination and a sort of short manifesto of which position. If you want to know any more about any of the positions, ask any of the council members or come to me after the debate just to see what's involved. And now we'll move on to private members' business. So this is the chance for you to bring up anything that you've seen in the news, anything you want to talk about, any sort of mini debate topic, anything you'd like to ask council. Want to just get on top of Corbyn? Yes.
Given that he's not here to defend himself, this House breathes a sigh of relief that Craig Miller isn't here to be like a 4-year-old child at Christmas over this motion and kind of go ape shit.
Ape what? I'm joking. Yeah, so much to Craig's dismay, I knocked him down instead of. He wanted a 4v4 debate so he could slip himself into that seat, but was that an actual motion? Or just
yeah, I mean, we can be...
Okay, do we have any seconders?
Well, I'd like to speak against the motion.
Oh, well, we'll have a seconder first. Anyone second the motion that this House believes is sorry? Thanks, Jason. So, yes, any comments?
I'm just dying to debate Craig Miller, and it's not happened yet. I fundamentally disagree with this motion. I believe that Mr. Miller needs to be here tonight. It's his night. It's his night to be.
The only other option for you, Bradley, is to sign up for every one of our debates. So, yes, this is point 4 against.
Against.
Okay.
I'm just slightly worried that if we start passing motions that members of the council should be here, it may set an ugly precedent for the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
Well, it's point 4, as no one else seems to. If Craig was here, there's a good chance that the Good Friday Agreement might fall apart.
Yeah.
In response to Mr. Alsop's argument, that sounds to me like a proposition for an epic rap battle between the two of you. So,
Seconded.
second, third.
So I believe we're going to take a vote on what was the motion? That this House believes the Senate believes that Craig Miller isn't here to debate with Corbyn. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
3, 4, 5. And all of those against say nay.
Nay.
Okay. You're the gladius friend.
Just don't tell him.
It's in the minutes. And if you listen to the podcast, which is available on iTunes, it's on our website, everything else, you'll hear it too.
Hey, Craig.
And all those abstaining, sorry. Who do you have?
Abstaining.
Thanks. 4. Okay.
How many disagreed? How many people want Craig
There was
over here?
10.
So,
At me.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Can you rephrase
okay,
one
moving
Craig
on.
Miller?
Any other points of private member business? Yes.
I don't know if it's much your mom like, but I think we should all congratulate Ben on a fantastically run
Well,
It was.
It's a very good point, and he does deserve it again for all the hard work put in for literally a year. Has gone into judging that IV and keeping tabs on it. So round of applause for Ben. I believe he accepts drinks as
I really do.
congratulator. Any other points of private business? Yes.
I would like to get the House's hot takes on what is obviously one of the most fascinating Irish elections in recent years.
Okay. Anyone any opinions on the Irish election?
We have to pay for water and we don't.
Yes. Any other facts on the Irish election?
Oh, I have a fact. At a polling station in County Louth, some photographers and journalists turned up so they could get a photo of Slab Murphy casting his ballot, and what was reported as a Slab Murphy associate sort of leaned in and went, "No, I just thought that was funny."
Okay. Any other points in the Irish election? Yes.
Well, I've seen quite a lot of commentary in the Irish election saying that it's a good thing that we've moved past civil war politics. And I was quite glad to see that, because all I know about Irish politics is the Civil War, so that the two parties are descended from those two sides. So I'm glad that I haven't missed anything over the last 90 years. Just as an addendum, I'm hoping Donald Trump comes over and sorts things out as soon as possible.
Just so we
That
know.
sounds horribly ominous.
That sounds like it's leading into the next point of private business. Any last points in the Irish election? Yes.
Do we know where Cormac put on? Because he was meant to be standing for election.
What's it?
I have no idea. I'll ask him. Cormac he was Litterfic for a year, I think, when he was up here during a placement. So I'll ask him and see and get back to you. Yes.
I didn't hear the start of that, but without the Labour Party, we're all doomed. So shit.
I can hear Craig from the other side. I can hear him.
I mean, Craig wrote his Kardashian speech. I saw his 7-minute speeches. I saw his speech, and the only thing he had written last week was communism versus capitalism. Just to contextualise who and what Craig is.
What Craig?
I believe that was correct. Any other points on private member business? Yes.
Actually, that's a good point you raised about Donald Trump. I remember a few years ago there was oil found somewhere off the coast of Connacht. So, judging by the racing chaos of the Irish election, it is only a few years until we are liberated by America. I love it.
Any other comments on that? I think it was like 11 billion barrels or something, so that's quite a lot.
It's more than I have.
They'll never invade you. So.
Any final points of private members before we move on? No, fine. And now it's time for President's questions. So does anybody have any questions related to the society? Preferably not related to myself? Grand. Okay, moving on for tonight. So you might have noticed that we've utilised the throne and we have welcomed our guest chair, who's Dr. Kelly McBride, who's a lecturer of political theory at Queen's, and he'll be giving sort of a general overview of tonight's debate at the end of the debate, just to give you something to think about. Speakers as well, something to think about. Okay, so the motion tonight is this House believes Corbyn would make a good Prime Minister. So same rules as always, 7-minute speeches, first and last minute are protected. If you stand up and ask a question, just stand up and say, "I'll quit sir," "I'll quit ma'am." What else? It's up to the speaker to move down, and please don't jump up sort of too quickly in a row, otherwise you'll hear shouts from me, Rob, and everyone else of no barracking. And please be polite and nice and civil, and try to really limit the party polemic. So I'd like to welcome the first speaker, Mr. Johnny Finlay.
Okie doke. I shall use my protected first minute to indulge myself a spot. I have two alternative speeches I can give. One of them consists entirely of me standing here and saying, "Core." I need the second one, definitely. Okay, moving on to the second speech. I would like to open, and this may not fill you with confidence, with a quote from Frankie Boyle, great theorist of our time. Mr. Francis Boyle wrote in the Manchester Guardian the following article, entitled, "It's odd that Jeremy Corbyn is considered nonconformist. He couldn't be more British if he bled tea." I am here to argue that Jeremy Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister. My colleagues on the proposition will argue this in different ways. Mo will argue that with the future that we are facing in Britain in 2016, you wouldn't want any of the alternatives to lead you into that. And Bradley will wrap up the proposition's case and issue a point of rebuttal to the endless ad hominem attacks that I expect will come from the opposition. I am here to make a slightly different argument. My argument is that Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister because he's more British than the opposition. Now, what is the role? No, thank you. What is the role of a Prime Minister? Inherently, what is the role of a Prime Minister? It is not any particular ideology. It is not any particular position on issues such as Trident or the national anthem. It is to provide leadership for a country which has one of the most powerful executives in the Western world. The monarchy in Britain is completely emasculated. We look to the Prime Minister for leadership. No, thank you. It is the role of the Prime Minister to channel national sentiment. That is why it's important that Jeremy Corbyn is very, very British indeed. But let me just point out the opposition. The Tory front benches, Cameron and whatever one of his clones. He's a bit like Emperor Palpatine in the Star Wars expanded universe. He has whole racks of these genetic copies ready to take his place. Whichever one it is, will bring in an interpretation of classical liberalism that is not British. It is not the classical liberalism of Smith and Locke and John Stuart Mill. It is classical liberalism as interpreted by the Austrian School of Economics and the Chicago School of Economics. Now, I didn't take geography to A level, but I don't think those two schools have a British foundation. This is an idea that came from America, it came from Reaganomics, it was imported into Britain, and it does not represent the older British tradition of liberalism that it claims as its heritage. That is my argument against the potential opposition. Please.
Why is it inherent good to represent British values? I mean, what makes that preferable to an Austrian or American school of thought?
Well, I think it is important for a head of government in a country where the roles of head of government and head of state have become so blurred as ours has, to represent national feeling and national sentiment. You may disagree, but that's a different argument. I think that would take us down a path that would be arguing against the whole concept of the nation state. And that's outside the remit of this debate, I suspect. So within the context, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, not of a denatured, denationalised state somewhere in the Northeast Atlantic, but of this country, that's why it's significant that he's very British. No barricade, thank you. I've got my eye out for you. Right. Ways in which he's British. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. He looks like a geography teacher. We've all said that. There are unconfirmed reports that he may in the past actually have been a geography teacher. If you have a point of information to make against that, I will hear you, sir. I will hear Mr. Spratt if he argues that he was not a geography teacher.
Jerry Adams also looks like a geography teacher.
Jerry Adams looks like the sort of geography teacher that wouldn't know where the northeast counties of Ireland are. I'll sleep easy tonight. Mr. Corbyn has a slightly haughty, patronising tone, but is nevertheless seen as a man of the people. You couldn't get the British dichotomy more down than that. But most importantly, he is perceived as being a militant, but he's perceived by certain elements of the right-wing political establishment and by the right-wing media as being a militant, iconoclastic trot. He should be in the SWP. Why isn't he in the SWP? Why did he choose to join one of the two big parties in Britain? He respected the history of the Labour Party. He respected its achievements, the NHS, the welfare state. He chose to join He chose to join a great British institution and work within it and reform it from the inside. Jeremy Corbyn is there in the Labour Party representing a great British tradition of radicalism. It goes back through John Stuart Mill, through John Locke, back to the Levellers, even all the way back to the Peasants' Revolt. That is more British. That is more British than the false economics, the false idea of our national identity that David Cameron and the New Labour Tories want to shut down. Jeremy Corbyn represents something older than that, something more authentic than that, and that is why I believe he will channel British national feeling more authentically and why he would make a great Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
For that, and I would now like to welcome the first speaker for the opposition, Mr. Owen Rice.
So far from the proposition, we have actually heard nothing about real policy. All we have been hearing is about how great Jeremy Corbyn is, that he's more British than anyone else. He looks like a geography teacher, he's a man of the people, and that he is a militant. We in the opposition are refusing to make this argument because it is childish and completely irrelevant. History isn't going to judge him by his fashion sense. He's not like one of these magazines, what do they call it, Insecure Women Weekly or something like that. This is completely irrelevant to his policies, to how the country will be run, to how history will remember him. They're trying to win the argument with rhetoric, not with facts, and that's what will be addressed here. We are not going to make the argument that Jeremy Corbyn will be a great Prime Minister, because he won't be. He will in fact make a disastrous one, and it will be based on 3 points. Firstly, previous Labour government's track record of failure. Secondly, his outdated and flawed economic ideas. And thirdly, his abysmal and weak foreign and defence policies. Every Labour government of the past 100 years, with the exception of one, has left the United Kingdom in a worse condition after leaving office than in coming to office. I actually put this question to the House: can anyone think of a Labour government that hasn't ended in disaster? The most practical way of that could end very badly for me. The most practical way of looking at British history is like this: Labour takes power under favourable circumstances, and after a few years, more and more unsustainable and short-sighted policies are enacted. As a result, the overall situation of the country deteriorates. For example, inflation rises, more money is borrowed, Following this, at the next election, the Conservatives capitalised upon this grievance to win the election. Upon coming to power, they initiate shock. No, thank you. Upon coming to power, they initiate shock tactic policies to improve the economy. As this happens, the situation in the country improves, and then Labour takes power again, riding on the false optimism of the people. Why is this important when focusing on Jeremy Corbyn today? Jeremy Corbyn has been an MP for the constituency of Islington North, interestingly enough, the smallest in the UK. Corbyn has not only lived through the most radical period of the Labour Party's history, but has also been on the front line. Yet he has learned nothing about his party's feelings or the feelings of previous Labour
On that point,
governments.
sir.
Go ahead.
Jeremy Corbyn is Jeremy Corbyn's actually a backbencher. He's not on the front line of his party. He's actually rebelled.
No, I meant on the front line of...
He's actually rebelled.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but I meant on the front line. He has been involved in the Parliament for that time. He's basically the embodiment of the old Labour establishment. Their days in power during the 60s and 70s were marked by economic perils of inflation, high taxation and excessive balance of payments from unsustainable loans. Secondly, we move on to his outdated economic policies. Britain, along with many other countries, has already tried collective economics. It has not worked in the long term. The distribution of resources from the highest to the lowest classes may sound fair, for example, by raising wages, nationalisation and high taxation. This is effectively the equivalent of taking heroin to cure a headache. You might get rid of your headache, but you're a heroin addict. So, moving on, the most substantial economic issue I want to focus on is what's called the living wage. Jeremy Corbyn has stated he is very strongly in favour of introducing a £10 per hour minimum wage. It's easy to see this as a good thing for workers and their families in the lower classes. In fact, the opposite is true. Raising the minimum wage will hurt small businesses most of all, particularly.
This is a misnomer. Every single empirical study has shown the national minimum wage does not actually reduce employment, and therefore it will increase the standards.
What actually happens is, because of laws, is that these small businesses end up struggling to break even. They lose profits. As a result, businesses will then make redundancies and sometimes go into full liquidation. Overall, this reduces employment and hurts the lowest classes in society the most.
On that point,
in fact, a rise in the minimum wage will only benefit larger businesses and corporations because they are capable of paying workers the £10 per hour living wage. This will overall lead to a lack of competitiveness in the market, which will lead to a rise in prices of products. Finally, Jeremy Corbyn's foreign and defence policy. As a third-year student of international politics, I can tell you that Jeremy Corbyn's foreign and defence policies are among the worst I've ever seen. It's nothing short of basically Kantian idealism. It's completely unsustainable in the real world. For example, Jeremy Corbyn proposes that we end the conflict in Syria with ISIS through a quote-unquote route of communication. He has done so by drawing parallels between secret talks with the British state and the provisional IRA in the 80s. There's a massive difference between this. ISIS is not a conventional terror group as we would imagine it. They're not fighting against climate change, they're not fighting for their country, they're not fighting for territory. Their leaders have been radicalised by religious fanaticism to the point that they are entirely convinced beyond any worldly logic that this is what they must do, this is what they have to do to achieve paradise after dying. And this is their submission to God according to their religion. You cannot just sit down with people like this and have a reasonable discussion. Force is the only method they understand. They will not seek compromise and dialogue as humanistic. They will not seek compromise and dialogue as humanistic or kind. They will see it as weak and exploitable. This is the harsh reality of warfare we are lucky enough not to have lived through. Moving on to the crisis in Ukraine, Corbyn has claimed that NATO is responsible for the crisis in the country and Russia's actions are not entirely unprovoked. Regardless of ethics, international anarchy in de facto terms means might is right. There exists no sovereign power above states to enforce international law in an impartial and fair manner. Sorry, I'm getting really hot. Indeed, international law through the UN is ultimately decided by states that can enforce real change in the system. You must always fight your corner or be subjugated, and what Corbyn has shown is weakness and a lack of understanding. Indeed, when asked in an interview would he consider using military force, Corbyn responded with, I'm not sure there are some, but I can't think of them at the moment. This is not a person you want to defend your country's best interests, especially compared to, for example, Vladimir Putin. Making these 3 points, I hope that I've convinced the House of the proposition's argument. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to welcome to continue for the proposition, Mr. Mohammed Hussain.
Good evening, everyone. Just 1 or 2 quick points of rebuttal. Actually, empirically, the Thatcher government had a 2% higher budget deficit on average through her whole term than the Labour government, and the Tories are normally the ones who actually go out going into recession. Right, anyhow, so what do you all want out of your Prime Minister? Is it a man or a woman who exudes power? Is it someone who just looks like a Prime Minister? Is it someone that the Sun has told you does not love his country? Is it, I don't know, someone who uses his ridiculous hair and fakes a jovial demeanour in the most important referendum in 40 years? Or, for me, it's always about who does that person work for? That's what will, in the end, always drive policy. And for all of his faults, perhaps his lack of gravitas or his media training, or even his control of the parliamentary Labour Party thus far, you cannot credibly say that Jeremy Corbyn has been anything but a man who has done what he believes in and what he believes is best for his constituents. He's a man of integrity. And I will come back to why this is more important than the usual warm-feeling, back-patting, muesli-munching of the left. But please first allow me to describe the world we're in now, and the few certainties that will follow. Most economists now acknowledge that we are in the world, in the end of neoliberal economics. The next economic order is yet to be defined, but there are some near certainties. There is a divergence unfolding before our eyes in the West. We are seeing the rise of the far right and the far left. A crisis which threatens to disintegrate the EU, and the EU, which, despite all of its faults, has ensured no war within its borders since World War II. By my watch, we're currently at 1933 in the political climate that we observe across Europe. Meanwhile, information is being monopolised by the biggest tech corporations. The banks now control the money supply. The transnationals dictate not only the laws relating to their own corporations, but now general economic policy. They have no borders and bow to none. And the decline of worker protection combines with the technological progress to ensure that within 20 years, all employment will be outsourced and almost all will work as sole traders, competing fiercely for the crumbs that big business have left over to us. Who will protect you? Who will not be tainted? Who will stick to their principles? And who does your PM work for? Those powerful influences, or for you? I believe Jeremy Corbyn works for us, the British people. And how can I substantiate this? I look at who works for him. His policy team, at least from an economic perspective, is not the old guard of the regressive left. These are the brightest forward-looking minds in policy. These are the people who have not been corrupted. So Nobel Prize winners such as Stiglitz, Krugman, Varoufakis, Piketty. He's a man who clearly listens to those around him. And therefore, who he's listening to is very important. I said before that the economic order has not been defined. This is our opportunity. The neoliberals have the resources, but as Syriza in Greece showed us, we have the numbers. There is a movement arising across Europe to re-establish sovereignty and power for the people. And when I say sovereignty, I mean real sovereignty, not the fishing quotas that Craig constantly goes on about. A democratic movement to return powers to the people, not the corporations and the bureaucrats. But the other, and you may say that this sounds utopian, but truth be told, the other option is dystopian. Those with power will always tell you that change is not possible, that it's radical or unachievable. I will finish early. I'll just finish with a quote from Jeremy Corbyn's mentor himself, Tony Benn. It's the same each time we progress. First they ignore you, then they say you're mad, and then dangerous, and then there's a pause, and then you can't find anyone who disagrees with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like to welcome to continue for the opposition, Mr. Andrew Hanlon.
Well, good evening all. Just a bit of a disclaimer, as Craig isn't here tonight, I just wanted to say that I embody his ideals to the best of his ability, so if I come across as a bit abrasive tonight, it's because I was just doing my best. I just want to start on a bit of an odd note, an Irish Republican quote from early 1998, because there's nothing like a good Republican quote to get people irate. This is a quote: "An assembly is not what people have laid down their lives for the last 30 years. We want peace, but the settlement must be for an agreed and united Ireland." This is not a quote from Gerry Adams, but you guessed it, his English stunt double Jeremy Corbyn, who was supposedly born on the wrong side of the Irish Sea. So I don't know why it was purported by the first proposition that he was extremely British, unless he refers to Britain as the entire island as well. Now, don't get me wrong, I love people. And I love people, and I love people to be treated fairly in society, and I'm in quite firm solidarity with the new Labour policies at the time of Blair and so on. But when Corbyn was elected as Labour leader, I wasn't too concerned, and I didn't know much about him, and I didn't really care, because I wasn't even able to vote for Labour in the last general election because, you can't vote for Labour here, but I just assumed that Corbyn indoctrinated general centre-left values that New Labour had been reasonably successful towards. But you see, this isn't because Corbyn brings to the table a form of socialism which isn't going to bear much fruit in a country that was actually built on the slaughtered necks of almost three-quarters of the world. And, we should sensibly look to a good leader for the Labour Party, and Corbyn isn't it. He has ascended to the leader of Her Majesty's most loyal opposition, and that title is a bit ironic because, he isn't so loyal to the royal family, let alone the UK. I mean, put him as a leader of the SNP or Plaid Cymru or Sinn Féin even, but the British Labour Party, not really. Why, you ask?
On that point, sir.
Yes.
He has publicly said that his personal feeling would have been against Scottish independence. So would you like to justify what he just said?
Yes, but he said his personal feeling was against Scottish independence, but he supported the SNP at the time, in many of their rallies, and he supported Plaid Cymru, he supported the SNP while they were running for support. So anyway, let's look at his policies, and importantly how that translates into his potential role as PM in 2020 or before, possibly. You see, I really agree that it was a good stance to learn from the past and not hurriedly enter into a bandwagon airstrike on Syria. But the fact is that now we've done it. And now there are potentially a lot of people in Syria and environs that aren't really happy about that. Corbyn's completely pacifist attitude to defence is not going to help in the coming years when we will be even a more ripe and juicy target for ISIS. Furthermore, Jeremy Corbyn loves trains. He'd build a railway to Mars if he had a chance. Private railway companies aren't the spawn of the devil as he makes them out to be. Along with every other private company that we all know Corbyn hates. Have ensured well-maintained, clean and efficient services. Looking at the state of the Northern Ireland Railways, which is public and vastly yes.
The vast majority of the British public actually support the renationalisation of the railways.
Yes, because they don't know how bad it will be if they do so. Because Northern Ireland Railways is a testament that it is very badly organised compared to no back. Anyway, other things that matter. Jeremy Corbyn is a massive fan of talking to his friends. his words, not mine, in Hamas and Hezbollah. Once again, I agree that there must be some form of discourse when there is ambiguity that needs to be cleared up. But there isn't any ambiguity with terrorist groups. Not right now. But there is no ambiguity with terrorist groups. If Corbyn wants to sit down for a cup of tea with ISIS and join them as well, that is not going to sit well with everyone. According to a reliable source who isn't present tonight and who I shall not name, but I will try to do my best impression, he said to me recently, Hanneman, Jeremy Corbyn really hates Jews. I wish Margaret Thatcher was still alive. Alright, so that's just to re-emphasize the fact that this is the debate that my good friend would have said if he was in. I want to views on something we should probably all agree with as university students. That is to getting rid of tuition fees. It seems really good on paper, but I can honestly say that you will be sacrificing quality for equality. Universities cost a lot of money to run, and if you're going to pay quality,
if you're sacrificing, if that's true, if it would be a sacrifice to quality, then while universities in Britain seem as one of the best education systems in the world for the whole time we had free tuition for decades and centuries.
Well, it was unsustainable, and the thing is that if you're going to be able to upkeep it, you need to have some sort of private tuition. I'm not saying to have the bulk of the entire tuitions put on you. I mean, that would be ridiculous, but subsidized is fine. A quick note on immigration. So we may be exiting the EU soon, and Jeremy Corbyn has always agreed with it until Cameron opposed it. But if he inherits a UK that embodies an open border policy without even being in the EU, uncontrolled migration of the unskilled will become rampant, and we'll all pay the price if we aren't paying enough already. I'm all for skilled immigrants, but if you're running the private corporations, which ironically keep the public institutions into the ground, the skilled aren't going to want to come here. In conclusion, and I know I'm not supposed to conclude by introducing a new point, but it's very important. Corbyn wants to nationalise everything. He wants to nationalise the education system, he wants to nationalise railroad system, a nationalised living wage, even a national Ireland. And when asked how he is going to fund it, when he runs private enterprise to the ground, how is he going to fund it? He says in his own words he's going to borrow and borrow some more. And he's not suitable for a time like now when a recession and financial crisis is going to hit us really hard. It will. Developing countries are now struggling. There's a greater war on terror unfolding now than post 9/11. And when the only thing that Corbyn can think of to fund his delusions of grandeur is borrowing, which by the same way is having Kanye West as Prime Minister, we're going to profoundly regret having Corbyn as Prime Minister. I am not against Labour, I'm against Corbyn. He will not make a great Prime Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, that was fabulous. And I propose to the proposition, Mr. Bradley Alsop.
I'll try and refrain from any impressions of Craig We've had a debate so far framed on one side by a complete lack of imagination and understanding of basic economic concepts, whereas on the other side we've had a real vision for what Britain is and what it could be brought forward to us today, and Jeremy Corbyn's place in that. Just to offer a bit of rebuttal so far, we've had a complete misunderstanding of ISIS. We've had a kind of an elaboration of a theme you hear in the media a lot that plays directly into ISIS' hands, that they are an unimaginable evil, that they are completely ununderstandable, completely unable to negotiate with them. This is exactly what ISIS wants us to think of them. They want us to be scared by them, they want us to overreact to them. Corbyn, on the broader points that have been brought up earlier on defence, Corbyn has not ruled out any military action at all. He's not an absolute pacifist. What he's actually said regarding Syria is that he's against bombing indiscriminately without any broader peace plan. To me, that doesn't sound like radicalism, that doesn't sound like pacifism, it sounds like common sense to me. You need to have a broader system in place, a broader peace plan before you start bombing indiscriminately. and that's all Corbyn has called for so far. Regarding economics, the living wage, just quickly to throw it out there, a living wage will not hamper small businesses if it also comes in at the same time as regulation of monopoly sizes and how large a business can come. If you break up larger corporations that are currently monopolising, or at the very least there are oligarchies in the business, that actually provides more space for small businesses to move in, and it will boost the economy because there'll be a more even distribution of wealth. You'll have better motivated workers to work harder in the companies they're in. There's so much. Quickly on railways, privatisation, there's been an abject failure in Britain. Ticket prices have gone up while conditions have gone down. The one small example in Northern Ireland was used, but to ignore the whole of the rest of Europe, where there's large industry, large public sector trains and services working across Europe that work much better for cheaper fares for their passengers.
One point, sir.
Yes, I'll take that.
Have you been on any recent European trains? Because I would like to remind you that in Germany ticket prices are much higher than in Britain.
Okay, yeah, point taken. For the information I've seen, that's not true at all. France, Holland, Germany, they've all gone much cheaper for the comparative same distance. Yeah, I have been on trains recently, they've got double deckers and everything, they're lovely. Point around tuition fees again. There's plenty of ways. Tuition fees will cost a few billion a year, which sounds a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the economy, it's not. You can scrap Trident, you can bring in a financial transactions tax, you can bring in a wealth tax, you can actually start bringing back the money that large corporations like Google are actually paying us, so that's easy dealt with. Free tuition is completely attainable. I'm going to be on to my own actual argument. I could spend the whole time refuting the simplistic arguments we've heard. But for me, the three things you want from a Prime Minister who is essentially a leader of the country: you want integrity, you want vision, and you want someone that can bring people together.
On that point, sir?
Yes?
You haven't said anything about policies.
I thought I'd just spent the last 2 minutes. So for integrity, Jeremy Corbyn during the expenses scandal was found to have claimed the smallest amount of expenses out of 650 members of Parliament. He's been arrested for fighting against apartheid, whilst our own Tory government was busy colluding with it in the back doors. He's been campaigning for things like nuclear disarmament, against inequality, and for environmental regulation for decades before most of the people in this room were born. And he's done that out of the spotlight of the rest of the world. Yeah.
Those are all admirable traits and make a very good MP, but not a very good Prime Minister.
I think I'll take a point. I'm running out of time. Sorry. I think they make a good MP, but I think surely you want integrity in a Prime Minister as well. Surely you want a Prime Minister that's committed and honest, and you can actually rely on for these positions. He shows vision. He's got a vision for an environment that we live in harmony with in a sustainable way. He's got a vision for an economy that reduces inequality and works for the many and not the few. And he's got a vision of politics that is accessible and representative of all sections in society. This vision managed to give him the largest mandate in UK political history. It saw the Labour membership from the beginning of the Labour leader elections to early January this year almost double in size. And contrary to what the media tell us, he has actually brought people together. The split in the Labour Party was not caused by Jeremy Corbyn. It has been there for decades. People have been disappointed and disillusioned with the Labour Party for decades. Jeremy Corbyn did not start that, but he could be the end of it. He's giving people back what they think the Labour Party should be. And yes, there are disagreements with him on his front bench, but the Labour Party is still standing. Despite what the media tell you, it's actually a minority of the parliamentary Labour Party that are vocal advocates of getting rid of Corbyn. The majority have supported him and have remained loyal to him. Ultimately, I think the debate comes down to the challenges that face the future of Britain, and whether Jeremy Corbyn would be a leader that could help us fight those. For me, the three biggest challenges that our generation, that all of us sitting in this room day to day, will be facing are an unstable economy, an unequal economy, and an unsustainable economy. We've got huge threats from the financial industry being unregulated and out of control. We've got inequality reaching, frankly, ridiculous levels, where a handful of individuals control as much wealth as half the world's population. And we've got climate change. It's coming, and it's going to. The IPCC, one of the most well-regarded intergovernmental scientific communities in the world, says that if global warming gets to the 2 degree point, human society as we know it will not be able to function. Jeremy Corbyn has answers to all three of these points. He has campaigned his entire life to reduce inequality, and he's got tangible policies such as the living wage, such as financial transaction tax, such as a higher rate of income tax and a more progressive taxation system. He's been campaigning against environmental degradation for his entire life, and he's also addressed the key problem with the financial crisis. We were told that Mr Corbyn, by the first speaker, that Mr Corbyn was dangerous and that he wouldn't be good for the economy because of Labour's precedent. But the point I was trying to make in my POI was that Jeremy Corbyn is not like those other Labour governments. The entire point of Jeremy Corbyn is that he's different. He rebelled 500 times whilst he's been sitting on the backbenches, and he represents a fundamental break from the way Labour has been managing the economy for the last 30 years. Jeremy Corbyn is a new vision for Britain. He answers the big challenges that Britain faces, and that's why I think he'd make a great Prime Minister. Thank you.
Proposition, and I now have to propose for the opposition, Mr. Chris Spratt.
So I have to apologise in advance because really it's been quite some time since I've done something like that. So I would ask the proposition be a bit gentle with me. So I think really to start off and to steady my feet and try to honestly eat up a fair bit of time of this really quite long 7 minutes. I think I'll have to start off with a story about how I first encountered Jeremy Corbyn. And that happened back in, I believe it was 2013 or so, when we had a debate at my old university, Queen Mary, a university which had a very active Labour contingent, and we had such famous luminaries as Tristram Hunt, everybody's favourite former Shadow Secretary. And one particular debate which was being run was a debate on the positives and negatives of Tony Blair's legacy. And it was a very active debate, as you might expect, with a lot of the old lines being trotted out. And none more so than an old grey man in the corner of the room, who at that point I thought was possibly a member of some trade union or some other creature of the left that had been sucked away in some political vacuum on the very fringe of left-wing thought. And it turns out I was largely right. He was an MP, the MP for Islington. And he has since emerged from the tar pits of Islington to come back as a political dinosaur to, let's be honest, damage the Labour Party. So,
from the fact that he bothered to come to like a university event and actually sit and get involved, surely that's pointing towards him being a good thing rather than a bad thing.
Yeah.
A lot of people come to university events that you wouldn't really want to come to university events. Let's be honest. No offense.
I took the thing about
Essentially, we've had a lot of arguments here from my colleagues in the opposition, such as his dubious associations in bygone days and suspect economic policies and fiscal irresponsibility. And you know something, I would really have to agree quite fervently with Finlay here, that he is very British, and a very particular form of Britishness, one that was quite unique to the left in the 80s, of an insular vein of thought, a left that did not think beyond London or did not think beyond trade unions.
On that point, less insular than a neoliberal consensus which does not think beyond the City of London.
Well, you're not exactly advocating for a neoliberal consensus, and I would appreciate that yes, perhaps that happened in the Labour the leadership election, and perhaps he might have been the best candidate. Because what Labour might need right now is the sort of thing that farmers do to their fields, and burning the field down to encourage new growth. So hopefully it will eventually have a positive effect.
On that point, are you suggesting a genocide?
There's more subtle ways of getting rid of intellectual dead ducks. So, I've seen arguments on Jeremy's capabilities for leadership, and unfortunately, it's a very odd thing, because I am someone who should have very natural sympathy towards Jeremy, being a multilateralist and indeed an anti-monarchist. But for some reason I've never been able to warm to him, and in part it's his leadership that I think has been a failing. To be honest, we've seen him failing to lead on Europe, letting the debate slide into a intercut conservative spat. We've seen him fail to lead on Syria, allowing his party to descend into chaos. To be honest, he's less of a leader and more of a sort of playground supervisor, watching things fall into chaos, but as long as you treat them with respect and respect their opinions and not try to persuade them in any way, that's okay.
On that point, sir?
Yes.
Given that the majority of the Labour membership is so opposed to the majority of the Labour parliamentary party on such issues, how would you suggest Mr Corbyn had dealt with those issues?
To be honest, I've always found it quite funny, the argument that we should respect Jeremy's mandate. His mandate of, how many thousand was it? Do you remember?
600.
600. And how many people elected in the Labour parliamentary party? I'd say it was quite a bit more than 600,000. So the true swing of mandate would, in all honesty, be the parliamentary Labour Party. And really, to conclude, we have a character who is a poor leader, and he is undoubtedly a man of integrity. But what use is integrity without an intellectual cut and thrust? We have a nice man who would probably do a good job in possibly a cabinet in a small role, but, well, he's not exactly Charlie Kennedy, who I would hold up personally as the true man of integrity and intelligence in the left, and most capable of explaining left-wing values to the general population. To be honest, I've kind of run out of things to do, and my train of thought is gone. And I think you all want to go to the bar soon enough, unless Jeremy Corbyn was here, in which he's not terribly fussed on the drink, is he?
I'll explain it first. It was Chris's maiden speech, so we have been writing down. Okay, so we're going to go for questions from the audience. Audience, did I ever say that? Proposition first, opposition, and then abstentions. Sort of stating on the motion, your opinions on the motion. So, do we have a question for the proposition first, please, guys? Yes. State your name for the minutes, please.
Yes. Jonathan Finlay. You said in the space of 5 minutes that Britain has both a liberal tradition and a radical tradition. You were right the first time. You also mentioned, Locke and Nell and various other terms you picked up from the blurb of a Haywood book. Britain does have a liberal tradition, but Jeremy Corbyn isn't a liberal. He's a democratic socialist. And in that regard, he doesn't fit with the ideology of most of the British people, who are quite right-wing. Going back through the 20th century, there's strong tradition of the working class Tory. The 19th century, the tradition of villa Toryism, which was newly enfranchised middle class people who have small dwellings and were conservative. And Jeremy, through the last 6 months of his leadership, he's been very unwilling to leave this little own Labour bubble that he's constructed around himself. With John MacDonald, who strongly resembles a small startled owl, and Diane Abbott, who is just mad. And by your speeches tonight as well, it seems Jeremy Corbyn would not make a great Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the occupied counties, but would instead make a great Prime Minister of the people who agree with him.
Oh Lord. Yes, that was directed at you, Mr. Finbar Rogers.
Indeed. So many points there. On the point about liberalism, the British tradition of liberalism as formulated by Locke, etc., no longer has any real position unless you assimilate it into the modern era. We don't live, in case you haven't noticed, in a feudal society anymore. The monarch is not the source of executive authority. We have to adapt British liberalism to the 21st century. Some people claim that can be done through Austrian school economics, saying that it's all the lessons we've learned from liberalism are all about reducing the power of the state and enabling people to trade, and that means that corporations should be able to ravage the planet because they're people. Some other people think that the lesson we learn from classical liberalism is that unjustified agglomerations of power should be questioned, and power should be, where possible, devolved to the people. So that's the point about liberalism.
Is it?
On the point about who Jeremy Corbyn would be a great Prime Minister of people who agree with him, yes, he would. That's why I argued that so many people agreed with him, because he's so British. Have you actually done a nationwide opinion poll?
Don't encourage him.
On who thinks? I have to give a long answer because it's a very long question. On who thinks Jeremy Corbyn would be a good Prime Minister. We have a lot of polls of small groups of people, we have a lot of polls of Labour members, we have a lot of polls of people saying, do you think he could be Prime Minister? But if he actually got that far, no one's asking that question. You have one more point. I'm reluctant to ask you what it was, because you'll take a while.
Yeah, don't ask me. I forgot.
I can't remember, but I think I've said enough, to be honest.
Thank you very much. We have a point for the opposition. Please, sorry guys. Yes.
Emily Walker. For fear of getting into an entirely different topic, it was brought up by the opposition at least twice that Corbyn is something to be feared because he doesn't automatically go into military intervention in regards to terrorism in the Middle East. Can any of the opposition think of any scenario where cellular terrorism has been defeated through pure military action?
Opposition?
It's not defeated through pure military action, but at the end of the day, you can't open dialogue with groups like ISIS. That isn't going to work. I mean, this is the thing. These are people who have been convinced beyond reasonable doubt that they have to die for their God, that their God is right, that this is what their God wants them to do, this is what they have been born for. And then, in the face of that, you have some lovely man, our Lord and Saviour Jeremy Corbyn, saying, oh no, no, we want to open a dialogue with you, we want to talk with you. It's obvious what option they're going to choose. You can't beat groups like this through dialogue. You have to use military force. I know what you're saying. There's also wider society issues. There needs to be a solid economy. There needs to be a strong government. But you can't defeat them through dialogue. There does need to be military force.
Thank you. And response from the proposition?
Yeah, so you kind of conceded the point, and then in the end you tried to defend your own view again, even though you'd already conceded the point. Jeremy Corbyn, as I've already said in my speech, Jeremy Corbyn is not saying we never go in, we never use military action. What he's saying is actually the things you just said. You actually just sound like Jeremy Corbyn. He's saying there has to be a wider structural peace process, and that just indiscriminate attacks don't help. And again, you're summoning up an image of ISIS and a psychology behind their motives that simply lacks empirical evidence. You're saying that they are completely unreasonable, no dollar can ever get through to them. That's exactly the image they want you to spread. You're doing their work for them by doing that. They are not completely driven by an inane ideology. There are other factors behind that, and yeah, we're not going to be able to stop every single one of them, but we can relatively reduce their power by focusing on very good things that you mentioned yourself.
Okay. Do you have a point of stating the motion? Any sort of general points of both sides? Anything you think the debate's missed tonight? No? That's not a good job. Okay, so we went for the proposition. That's these three guys. Any questions? Yes.
Yeah, hi, Jamie. So a lot of your argument has been about his sort of general values and ideas, but I want to draw back to what the idea of what those are, because a lot of it comes from his main mentor, Tony Benn, who you have to kind of remind people that he's the person that had a really big hand in writing Labour's 1983 manifesto, which absolutely tanked and is being critiqued by some as being the longest suicide note in history. So someone who draws his ideas from that sort of tradition, how could he be a great Prime Minister?
He doesn't anymore at all. If you look at his policy advisors, as unfortunately I didn't say it clear enough in my speech, but if you look at his policy advisors, it's the last 3 Nobel Prize winning economists, it's all the policy drivers who are looking forward into 2030 as encouraging investment in green tech, biotech, information tech, and then bringing in antitrust regulation so then you can bring down corporations back to a normal level. These don't look to me like backwards policies. These are policies of things that just didn't even exist back in the 80s. So no, I'd say that Corbyn is a forward-looking politician.
A brief response to the opposition? Okay. We'll have a question for the opposition instead. Yes.
I'd just like to clarify one thing about opposition, where you somehow can't be British in understanding of the issue in Ireland, because the quote that you referenced was nothing more than just understanding of the issue in Ireland. It wasn't Chucky or Lad, it wasn't Ireland unfree shall never be at peace. It was something I think that most British people would agree with. So I'd like to clarify that point.
Well, obviously to respond to that, the fact is that he still maintains that it's not a sentiment that it's a peaceful sentiment that the North can exist peacefully, the South can exist peacefully, or whatever. He is pretty adamant about the fact that Ireland needs to be united politically as 32 counties, and that Northern Ireland should cease to exist. That's what he said there, and it was pretty clear that, if I remember the quote, 30 years of fighting was not just for an assembly, or it was that he wanted his viewpoint, which was that Ireland should be united, which is fine if Northern Ireland wants that, but it's not really up to him.
Something that he makes you
back and forth. Brief response from you guys?
Yeah, I just failed to see the relevance of why that would fail to make someone a Prime Minister. But by that argument, then a good 40% of the citizens in Northern Ireland wouldn't be fit to be a Prime Minister by your own argument. Because there's a good chunk of Northern Ireland that also wants to see United Ireland. So I don't see why that one particular viewpoint should be a barrier to someone being a Prime Minister, and I don't see why that would inhibit them being a Prime Minister.
You finished in the bar.
Save it for the
okay, so this. A sentence. Yes, if you have a point stating the motion, yes.
There may be an added time. Everyone's thrilled. Part of the trick is that you all did well, though, and I'm also not going to be crappy. You did. Part of the trick of debating isn't just saying X is good; it's explaining why X is good. So as the PR has to raise it family, why is being British a good thing? And I think you wrong past an answer, and I'm going to be answering another question that I missed. But saying, you need to represent a national community, what does that mean? And whenever we opposition talk about, we don't want to you don't want to renationalise, nationalisation is bad. It wasn't properly explained. Again, I think we passed an answer, or passed an explanation about you believe in the state sector was inefficient, but I don't think it's properly explained. I think part of the trick to convincing an audience like us, people like me who genuinely don't have an opinion on the motion coming in, part of the trick is going that extra step. It's only, sometimes it's only 10 extra seconds, sometimes it's 2 extra minutes. It's going an extra step and explain to your audience why it is what you said is harmful or is good.
Okay, thank you, Raj.
Well, I mean, I'll make the same point again, maybe just a bit longer. The motion is framed as this House believes Corbyn would make a great Prime Minister. We assume of Britain. This is a nation state. There is a premise in this. There are a lot of premises in that motion. There are premises about the internal logic of the English language for us to assume that the motion makes sense. We are assuming some premises. I haven't spelt them out. We are assuming that we accept the concept of nation states and we accept the concept of them having heads of government. Now, we look in the past at who has been considered a great British Prime Minister. We see Churchill, we see, yes, Thatcher, we see Attlee, we see Wilson, we see people who are remembered as having channeled the national spirit at some important point in history, at some important juncture. They have made themselves, because cometh the hour, cometh the man, they have made themselves, or woman, part of the national story. I argued that that was significant. Mo set out the time we are in, why he is the right man for that time. I think, and Bradley dealt with them. I think between the three of us, we've answered the points that need to be answered within the confines of this debate fairly comprehensively.
Okay, thank you very much. And would any opposition like to respond to think of explaining why state-run things are deficient? Is that right? Something like that? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we basically said the same. We argued the points that they made, and we said the opposite, and why we gave disadvantages of those things. So, it was a discourse on which is actually the point of a debate. So, I mean, I think respect to that both sides in their job. So.
Okay, that's fine. A point to the proposition. These three lovely gentlemen.
I thought we were doing opposition.
Yes. Oh, that was attention, sorry.
I heard a little bit about the Austrian School of Economics, and I thought that was interesting, but I'd just like to hear more about the substance of it, and not just that it was an Austrian School of Economics, not a British school of economics thought. Here.
Economics historically breaks into two different camps. So you had the Keynesians, who believe that when you go into recession, you stimulate your way out of it. The Austrians, there's a couple of different types, but it fundamentally is mostly with a guy called Hayek. And the idea is that you never touch anything ever, and eventually it doesn't matter how many people are unemployed, how many people starve, eventually things will be fine again. Okay, my political views have been quite clear throughout that explanation. But the Austrian economics, basically what's happened over the last about 3 years is you've had a series of economics papers that have come out and disproven the Austrian economics to be what we should have done in 2008. And I'm not talking about lefty firebrands. It's been the IMF. You've had studies coming out from the World Bank. In fact, they found that inequality, if the top 20% their income increases, the GDP of the whole country decreases. And that was the Austrian school of thought. Keynesian is what we're recommending. That's the kind of economics that Corbyn is pushing through, and that's why we think Corbyn would be a good Prime Minister.
Do we have a question for the opposition? Yes.
Picking up on the second opposition, you made a point which said that in his role as leader of Her Majesty's most loyal opposition, Jeremy Corbyn isn't loyal to the crown because he doesn't believe that there should be a queen. How does that disqualify him not being loyal from being Prime Minister when shouldn't you, if you don't believe there should be a queen or a royal family in this country, get into politics so you can get into government, so you can change something, rather than, for example, going around and being violent, having protests, when you can actually get something done, you can change something. So should he not be in that role, so he become Prime Minister, and then he can solve the problem that he believes in?
That entire point of was really meant as a bit of a joke, because I wasn't intending it for it to be taken so seriously. I don't really have much of an educated response to that, and I do agree with you. So
that's a first. And one final point of extension before I invite Dr. McBride to some closing arguments. Abstaining on the motion? No, so what do you think? If you'd like to come and have some closing remarks.
I'd just like to close the door. Right, well, thanks very much for having me along. It's a long time since I've come to a formal debate. When I came in the door, I noticed people in gowns, and I thought, I'm slightly underdressed for this. At the rate I'm going, I'm going to be lecturing the onesie fairly shortly. Then Finbar alarmed me even further by saying I might have to make a few remarks at the start. And I thought, I haven't prepared any remarks. If you've had the misfortune of seeing me gallop through my slides to get my lecture done before the next lot come in, you'll know I like to prepare every last word and practice them in advance. So that was a bit alarming. Anyway, once things got started, matters improved. I noted that there was a sort of dog whistle quality to these remarks about geography teachers that I felt somehow implicated. So I'd like to make it very clear now that I am not now, nor have I ever been a geography teacher. But who knows what's planned for me in the future. Now, in terms of the substance of the debate, it was suggested on this side of the House that Jeremy Corbyn was quintessentially British, while on the other hand it was suggested that he might in fact be Jerry Adams. Which does raise the question, who has seen them in the same room? That's something we need to keep an eye on. We were warned about the dangers of foreign economics, particularly the Austrians, but really, surely nothing bad has ever come out of Austria. It was suggested quite forcefully that Jeremy Corbyn does not look like he would win an arm wrestle with Vladimir Putin, which is a fair point because Putin is quite scary. It was also suggested that he has an excessive love of trains, but very ably suggested, on the other hand, that double-decker trains are quite nice. I agree. Chris, at the end, reminded me of an anecdote when he talked about coming across this grey man in the corner of the room at the meeting in Queen Mary. I mean, fair play for trekking all the way out to Queen Mary in the first place. But my uncle Seamus, many years ago, who attended another university not very far away from here, once attended a debate, and on finding the hall empty because he got there a bit early, there was only one old gentleman in an anorak sitting there. So he sat down beside him and said, "It should be good tonight, I hear Brian Faulkner's coming." And the guy said, "Yeah, I am Brian Faulkner." Anyway, hopefully Jeremy Corbyn has greater facial recognition than that, helped on by his beard. Bradley, on a more serious note, pointed out that disappointment and disillusion with the Labour Party is a long-term feature, and I can confirm that, having lived through the new Labour years. This is certainly the case. On this side, they would very much like to think that Jeremy Corbyn will change that. I have a bad feeling myself that things may not get very much better. But just to close, I'd like to come back to the opening, I guess you call it the Rivers of Tea speech. Jonathan here. And coming over, I thought about public speaking. I thought, I don't really know much about public speaking, but one little tip I picked up from that great humanitarian, Powell, I heard in an interview many years ago, he said, the trick to good public speaking is not to go to the bathroom. because a full bladder lends a degree of urgency to your speech, not due to racism, just the desire for the toilet soon. So I'd like you to look kindly on our various speakers, and I hope that they were indeed holding in the piss rather than taking it.
Thank you very much for that, and thanks for coming. Hope you enjoy this evening. And can we give Killian another round of applause? So the first vote we're going to take this evening is based on your personal opinion. So everybody can vote on this, and if you would like to just raise your hand. So the motion tonight is this House believes Jeremy Corbyn would make a good Prime Minister. All those in favour say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
13. And all those against your personal opinion, say raise your hand and say nay. No. And all those abstaining. 13. Okay, and this one is going to be recorded in our minutes. This one's the official letterific vote. So if you have your re-shining membership cards ready, you can vote as well. Your honorary re-membership card will give it to you. So all of those who think that this is based on speaker ability, all of those who think that the proposition spoke better tonight, please raise your membership card and say aye.
We generally vote for this.
Oh. 21?
This is very
Did you all vote for yourself? Okay. And all of those who believe that the opposition spoke better tonight, please raise your membership cards and say nay.
Craig is astrally projecting.
One? Yeah. And all those abstaining on the motion, think they spoke equally good or equally rubbish? 2. So I believe that the proposition have won the debate this evening. Before you all pack up and get ready to head to the House Bar in Stranraer, I'd like to thank Dr. Killian McBride once again. And next week's motion is this House believes women create their own glass ceiling. Is that correct? Yes. So here 7 o'clock next Thursday, this House believes women create their own glass ceiling. Thanks very much for coming.